I think the word fairy tale is something that people were playing off of when they were sending in treatments. And there were some fascinating treatments. I mean, all kinds of stuff with puppets and this one and that one, and inspired by the Thunderbirds, that old kind of puppet animation from England in the 60s. We pretty much had everything you could possibly come up with around a fairy tale.
On my way up north, up on the venture I pulled.
But I felt that Sanji was taking the word fairy tale and saying we have such an idea of what that should be, and most of us are very disappointed because our lives aren't like the books.
Silver lining and I'm so sad.
When I was making the video, I knew we were doing something special. It felt like that. You could feel it from other people. And there was a desire that everybody had to explore this one.
On my way up north, up on the venture I pulled.
Hi, my name's Leslie Ecker. I work at Digital Domain, and I have the good fortune to be the visual effects supervisor on this shoot. So we have a couple of misfits who meet, and they kiss and become complete, which is a really nice analogy. The trouble is, how do we show that in visual effects? And that becomes our problem. This is an interesting shoot because we're doing some things here that I don't think people have really seen before. We have an idea that's kind of a symbol of someone who is not, personality-wise, not fully formed, becoming a fully formed person thanks to the influence of someone they love.
Sorta Fairytale with you. Things you said that
That's about straight ahead, so that's the way it comes. So it comes over to more up there. Is that working? A little bit more. Needs to go about. Keep on going. Where's Sanji is our director, and it's really interesting to work with Sanji because his ideas are so creative and so elegant. And I think that the idea that he's chosen for this video is particularly apt because of the analogy of completing a person with the love of another.
Sanji is the kind of director that if you're going to work with him, you have to let him do what he does. He and I had a relationship that was very trusting. As an artist, you make a choice. You say, these are the things that I really need incorporated in this on an emotional level, because this is what the song's about. But then you have to let them interpret it. We were sort of working in teams. So leg lady, handman, and head people were, it was sort of like, I don't know, a relay race. So they'd take over and we'd have to study and watch where they were in the shot. And then our heads had to fit exactly where their legs are. I mean, they would be measuring and you're contorting yourself so that your head is working with her leg. And the effects guys are right there with you, measuring, talking you through it. It was very intimate.
I'm going to take this guy and flip it over. So we're going to cover it with green, and that's probably a good place for it. And we'll lift the camera by this thickness so we have the same perspective as if it was sidewalk.
Okay. This is Tori's travel off the curb and into the gutter. Her heel breaks because of something Adrian whispers in her ear. It sort of unnerves her, and she walks in a pensive manner, and the shoe buckles, and she ends up losing her heel, and she starts to descend towards the gutter. That's the shot.
Here, so we're going to do this. That's the action.
I think physically, I was having to do things in a very controlled way. As a pianist, it's a different kind of discipline physically, not moving for minutes at a time and then tilting ahead a millimeter. That's a very different discipline than being able to play and get the music out
The scene we're shooting right now is Tori has actually, her heel has broken and she's landed in the gutter. And since she's just a foot, she has no real support to get out. So Adrian Brody's her only actual ally in helping her get out of the gutter. And he only has a hand, so he really doesn't have the force to pull her out. So he's, at this point, he's actually just cleaning the leaves and cigarette butts and the dirt from the gutter. The gutter is just meant to symbolize a metaphor for her past. Everyone has a past, so this is her past, and he's coming to terms with it by cleaning it off her before he yanks her out.
It wasn't an airbrush set. We really were at these places, and the green screen was there. But on location green screen, which I enjoyed, so you're really in the gutter in LA. That really is pigeon poop.
Sound, please. Rolling.
I think Tori was a real trooper because, once again, it wasn't an easy thing to ask for her to lay in the gutter the first time we met. But she was just like wide-eyed and willing, and she's such a hard worker. Yeah, because we were asking her to do things that were the type of things you and I wouldn't even want to do, not comfortable on our bodies. And she would, I think she even hurt her neck in one shot.
Many of the shots that we're doing have 6 or 8 pieces, and they all need to come together in little bits and pieces or large areas and get combined seamlessly to be part of the same shot. And then to further complicate it, of course, it all has to sync up with the music, both with lip syncing and with action and story.
I tried to downplay it with a belt about us. You said that you'd take it as long as I could. I could not.
Once again.
I like to incorporate not just a story for the story's sake, but try and understand what in 4 minutes there's a structure. You can have 3 acts. You can have an opening, a middle, and an ending.
Let's pull the blanket out quickly. All right, who's going?
Sanji had really thought this out. He knew it was called Scarlet's Walk. And he felt like somehow the video needed to be an extension. And for him, because of the word walk, that anchored him immediately to the leg. I think that the idea of us being in pieces and imperfections, we all can't be Cinderella. And not all of us want to be Cinderella. But sometimes we don't really know, how does our story fit into a fairy tale? Because sometimes, the prince is a frog, and you don't end up with him, but you still get your little story.
Higher. Okay, cut. Moving on.
Recommendation.
All right, good.
Try and
Going in tighter. Check the gate, please.
On my way up north, up on the Ventura, I pulled back the hood, and I was talking to you, and I knew then it would be a lifelong thing.
That's perfect. That's it. Smooth walk. All gliding. You have a book on your head. You're trying to...
Okay, all right. Grab a quick meter reading and then we'll shoot. Action story.
Turn and up and turn and walk. Cool.
Nice.
That's pretty good.
Cut.
That was pretty good. That's good. This next one, let's leave a little more of your face visible in the camera. So as you're walking away, try and maybe look to the right a little bit so we see some of your face because we just saw your hair.
Probably the most difficult thing was each movement of the head or each movement of the neck. It started to look more realistic if you had that same similar movement in the arm. So it always had to be a planned motion or move. It offered very little room for spontaneity. It's almost as if you had to always know which way Tori's head was going to move so you could match the arm the same way. Mm-hmm. And that isn't always the easiest thing to construct in a music video because you don't have the time to think it all out.
And I ride alongside, and I roll along.
All right, have Sid bring them down there. Never mind. Have Sid bring them down to us, please.
Some of these shots get more difficult, like the one we're doing now, where a hand brushes sand from her face, and he is standing on his head with a hand up, brushing her face, and she's mounted to a leg that's standing on the sand. We have to do this in several pieces. We have the background, we have the hand and the face, which are shot together because they actually interact. And then we also have the leg, which is shot separately to include and paint onto Tori's neck. Then we have to shoot the head upside down on the sand in position. So we're actually just preparing to hang our actor upside down and put his head on the sand, just make it look just right, and then shoot that to composite with all the other pieces.
Sanji had really thought this out frame by frame. I mean, in his mind, every beat in every bar was a physical, rhythmic marriage. The word fairy tale is something that people were playing off of when they were sending in treatments. And there were some fascinating treatments, there's no question about it. But I felt that Sanji was taking the word fairy tale and saying we have such an idea of what that should be, and most of us are very disappointed because our lives aren't like the books. And who wants them to be, really? I mean, if you look at it, I don't eat Wonder Bread. You know, I like pumpernickel. There are all kinds of fairy tales that haven't been explored, and maybe a woman that doesn't feel like she wants to show things about herself yet. She's a bit vulnerable. People have maybe turned that against her, so she has the two-toe digits. For her, you know, that's her private place. So when he laughs at that, he doesn't realize that she's been dealing with that since she was 2 years old. And it's like, yeah, heard it all before, yeah. Not from you. And so I think the word fairy tale was where we were deciding, how do you turn this word upside down? How do we make it a different kind of one? And since this is a sonic novel, Scarlet's Walk is a narrative, I like the idea of entering the first single being a fairy tale. I have a little girl. She is fascinated by DVDs. I mean, she works them herself, wants to see, you know, the Mad Queen, Scary Lady Mommy. She's fascinated by these horrible, awful characters. And we spend time, most of our time together is in story form. And it's odd how when you have a little one in your life, they turn everything on its head. And I start seeing things differently than I would if she weren't there. I guess the craziest thing about the video is I had no idea. I mean, in my wildest dreams, I did not think I'd be filming appendages and love. It's not as if I sat there around the dinner table with everybody and said, hey, you know, in my deepest dreams, I'd love to be a leg lady. And when a rough came in, I was somewhere doing promo in Europe at the time, and I got a call on the phone, and somebody at the studio in Cornwall had just picked it up and put it in. And the special effects guys hadn't done their thing yet to it. So I spoke to somebody for the first time. Can you imagine? You've just done this whole thing. And you hear this voice on the other end of the phone in a little bit of shock and horror. Well, this is probably the weirdest thing I've ever seen in my life. And yet, are the heads supposed to be attached? They weren't attached yet to the bodies. So my first orientation of the video was, oh my God, there's Anne Boleyn everywhere walking around. The idea was when they kissed that it was this it was this idea of what a magical kiss can do. It takes you to places that you've never been, and for them, that meant places physically too, where they didn't have parts of themselves. So that scene was very sensitively done, because I think everybody was exhausted at that point on the shoot, but there was an awareness that we were making something we all believed, and we knew so far that we had it. Now, could these two people trust each other and take the next step with each other? And he held a space for us to do that. I mean, he was great about that. So we had seen the contortionists from a distance doing their thing. And once the contortionists had done their thing, in order for them to do it, then we had to have our kiss. So we realized that it was kind of a sacred kiss. Instead of creating a child, you create your own self. At the end of Fairytale on the album, they have parted ways at the Bay Bridge in San Francisco. They've gone through, as we said, the desert, through Arizona, through Zuni. They've gone into the depths of New Mexico. They've gone to the Pueblos. They've gone to many different Native American sites that stir things up in her, and stir things up in him too, but they have different reactions to it because they're at different places in their life. I mean, at the end of the day, they're having this love affair, but they also have lives. And I think they're trying to see how each other fits into each other's life. And at a certain point, she realizes that she's going to have to change too much of herself to fit into his life. It's not an option that he fits into hers. He can't leave his lair. And she wouldn't want him to. That's part of the reason she adores him. I had a fairy tale the other day with my little girl, just picking up seashells on the beach and making a crap sandcastle. I mean, it wasn't successful in that you would not know that it was anything except a pit. And yet, there was nothing we would have changed about it. What did we achieve? That's what alchemy is, I think. It transcends the function of the experience. So it's not, did we do the thing we thought we were going to do and set out to do? We had a goal, blah, 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 blah. But we weren't wanting for anything. The two of us just sat there giggling. We'd buried her daddy up in sand because, he has to make the perfect sandcastle and it had to be right, and he has all the accoutrements that one gets to make a good sandcastle. And the two of us just kind of looked at each other and said, we're going to bury him in sand. And I think in that moment, maybe, your plans change. What you thought your story was going to be that day, the perfect story, the perfect day. It ended up completely different, and it was better.